What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, on here to give my instant reaction to Notre Dame taking down Indiana 27-17 in the first round of the CFP. This game went about the way I expected it. All week long leading up to this matchup, I was screaming at everybody that Notre Dame was too tough for Indiana to handle. Indiana had a phenomenal season, 11-2, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, one season turnaround that we've seen in the history of college football. I give a lot of props to Curt Cignetti and the incredible job that he did turning around the Hoosiers football program, because for as long as I've been watching college football, Indiana has been irrelevant. They've been known for being a basketball school, and he does talk a lot of shit, but I like his coaching style. When he first arrived to Indiana, nobody really thought Indiana would be as good as what they were this year. He had to get people riled up. He had to get people excited to watch Hoosiers football, and he did that. So I don't really have a problem with him talking a lot of trash. It's not like the dude hasn't been able to back it up. It's just that he bit off more than his team could chew tonight against the Fighting Irish. This is a Notre Dame team that has been disrespected all year long. You're making an argument for how Alabama, Ole Miss, and Miami deserve to be in over Indiana, but Indiana got into the playoffs because they beat the teams that they were supposed to. Alabama should have never lost to Oklahoma or Vanderbilt. Ole Miss should have never lost to Kentucky or Florida. So Indiana, although hindsight is 2020, I still don't believe that they were one of the best 12 teams in college football. I felt like South Carolina or Alabama or Miami were more deserving than what Indiana was. But, I'm not too mad at them being in this thing. At the end of the day, you can only play who's on your schedule. And they beat all the easy teams that they were supposed to beat, unlike Alabama and Ole Miss. Same thing with Miami. But they look soft tonight. The fact that early during this game, you get the interception from Riley Leonard, and then you follow that up with an interception of your own, and then boom, Jeremiah Love hits a 98-yard touchdown, and that pretty much broke the game wide open. Indiana was just too doggone conservative. It seems like they only had 4 plays on their play calling sheet on offense. That was running the ball outside the tackles, throwing back shoulder fades, which was not working until their final drive when they finally got one. And the reason why throwing back shoulder fades or just trying to attack Notre Dame's defense vertically is a losing game plan is because that's the strength of this defense. Notre Dame has one of the best secondaries in college football because they have incredible athleticism and incredible size in that DB room. They don't have a single starter in that secondary that's anything less than 6 foot, 175 pounds. That's a lot of size, a lot of length. It's incredibly hard to throw the football on this Notre Dame secondary. Not only were they too reliant on trying to get the vertical pass game going in the outside run, but they were calling a bunch of screen passes. They just had a really conservative game plan offensively. And on the special teams end of things, they could barely get a punt off in the first half. And when they were able to, the punts were only going 20, 30 yards downfield. Defensively, Indiana played a pretty good game. Although they did give up 193 yards on the ground, this is a defense that coming in had the best run defense in all of college football. Notre Dame just pounded them. And Notre Dame was the tougher, more physical football team. You could tell from the first play of this game the differences between these two teams. Indiana looked like a junior varsity high school team on that field. Notre Dame looked like a varsity high school football team on the field. When you compare the size of Notre Dame's defense, what they had on their front seven, on the back end of their secondary, compared to Indiana's offense. Indiana just looked small. Not only did they look small, but they played small. You're down 17 points. And instead of going for it on fourth down, you decide to punt in the fourth quarter. That moment right there perfectly epitomized what this game was for Indiana. You just got drug up and down the mud by a more physical and a more tougher team. You played like the Powder Puff Girls tonight. And although I did take Notre Dame to cover that 6.5 point spread, I thought that Indiana would have put up a little bit more fight. You know, this game, the final score, it was way more one-sided than what it shows. It shows 27-17, but watching this game, it just felt like it was 42-7 because Notre Dame was just in firm control. There was not one time that Indiana felt like they had a chance to compete in this game against this Fighting Irish squad. And then in Indiana, you know, although you can say that they may be a fraud team, this is a really good Notre Dame team. And next week when they play Georgia in the next round, they got a really good chance to beat them. And the reasoning for that is because Georgia's biggest weakness offensively has been their lack of consistency. You know, their wide receivers have tons of drops. The quarterback play from Carson Beck wasn't that good, so I don't really think losing him is that big of a concern. I think Gunnar Stockton brings more to the table than what Carson Beck did, more mobility. I don't think he could be any worse than what Carson Beck was, but even with Carson Beck, Georgia was going to have a tough matchup because Notre Dame has a really good secondary with that size, that athleticism, the length that they have. They're really going to push Georgia to have to beat them just overly relying on the ground game. And that's kind of the same recipe that Notre Dame has. Notre Dame, they had a lot of success tonight throwing the ball with Riley Leonard. He had a really efficient game. But this is still a run-first team at its core. When you can force Notre Dame to abandon the run, that's when you can get them feeling uncomfortable because they don't want to win games having to throw the ball 30-plus times to win. That's not their identity. Their identity is based off them winning with physicality. So against Georgia, I think that's going to be a really good game. I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame won. I still will go with Georgia, but Notre Dame has a pretty good chance to win that game and advance to the Final Four. And that's why you can't judge a team based off one loss. What the biggest mistake was that people made with Notre Dame is that they tried to define what this team was, who they were, after losing to Northern Illinois. And even I felt a little bit of a victim to this when that NIU loss first happened. I thought it was disgusting. I thought it was a fireable offense, but it's not about how you start. It's about how you finish because ever since Notre Dame lost to NIU, they've been one of the most dominant teams in the country. They have one of the longest winning streaks among all teams at this moment. So you got to give a lot of respect to how good Notre Dame has been ever since they suffered that NIU loss. This has been a completely different football team. They were struggling to find their identity in their first two matchups. Now they know who they are. Indiana, you just ran into a buzzsaw tonight. You just didn't look like you had the horses, the talent, nor the coaching to even be on the same field as Notre Dame. And Curt Cignetti, once again, I want to reiterate this. He's a fantastic coach. When he says, I win everywhere I go, Google me, that's not really him being arrogant. It's kind of facts. And for him to get Indiana to the playoffs, rather if they deserve to be in or not, is a huge accomplishment. But tonight, you know, his mouth just couldn't back up the big checks that his team had to cash because playing on the road in South Bend is a really tough place to get a win at. And Notre Dame, just with their playing style and the size and speed discrepancy between these two teams, with Notre Dame having the advantage in that department, there was no chance I felt like Indiana had at winning this game. But these are my thoughts on Notre Dame's 27-17 win over Indiana in the first round of the playoffs. Give your thoughts to this game down in the comment section down below. Remember to subscribe, hit that bell icon if you're new so you don't miss when we drop new content. when we go live. We're not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you guys shortly again.